Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be across this beautiful blue-green globe of ours. Welcome to Real News Live. It is a Toxically Masculine Tuesday, and I'm your host, Mike Barrett, in Las Vegas, Nevada. As I always am, joined tonight by the usual crew, the epic studs, the truly masculine men that I spend my time with. On my immediate right, from somewhere in the Carolinas, Dr. Brooks Agnew. Brooks, how are you doing tonight, and what are you drinking? I myself am having a Dr. Pepper. How you doing, Brooks?
Doing fine. Had a productive day at the property and at the county with the fools down there, and I'm just drinking coffee tonight.
Yeah, getting permission to build on your own land. Yeah, thank you. Yes. All right, and immediately below him to my, diagonal, Steve Doran, the trail boss, somewhere in Houston still, Steve?
Yeah,
in Houston?
still in Houston.
Sorry, in Texas. I've not said Houston. I doxed you. It's Texas.
Well, it doesn't matter.
The American desert Southwest. Steve Doran, how are you tonight? And what are you drinking, buddy?
I'm good, and I'm drinking Mountain Valley spring water, as usual.
Mountain Valley spring water. And, of course, the man immediately below me, our cub reporter, the youngest member of the crew at 43 years old or whatever you are. I don't know how old you are. TV's Blake Wally, the only man who went to January 6th and lived to tell about it. Well, he and Brooks did anyway.
Neither one of them got picked up by the FBI.
There's still time for them to arrest you, so maybe I should be quiet about that, Blake. TV's Blake. What's that?
Come and take it.
Come and take it. TV's Blake Wally. Blake, how you doing tonight, and what are you drinking?
Doing well, Mike. It's 47 years to be specific, and I can say I'm in the Nashville area now. So I think hopefully the scare of J6 is over. Although I was a journalist that day.
That's right.
Never went in the building. All right.
So are you liking Nashville, Blake?
What's that?
Are you liking Nashville?
So far, so good. It's a nice little change of scenery. So it's good to be here. I'll be drinking some Kentucky whiskey, though, Maker's Mark.
Little Kentucky. Well, does Tennessee make any whiskey that's any good? It's all just moonshine, right? So
they make whiskey. Bourbon comes from Kentucky.
Right. You can't call it bourbon anywhere else.
Can't call it bourbon anywhere.
It's true.
In Louisiana? Not even Louisiana?
Nope, it's got to be whiskey. It'll be American whiskey, Louisiana whiskey, whatever. Yep.
Wow, I did not know that. That is something new I have learned today. Yes, to answer Rick Norman's question, this will be the last Toxically Masculine Tuesday of the year because next Tuesday is Christmas Eve. We're not going to do a show then, and then following Tuesday is New Year's Eve. We will not be doing a show then because Mike hopefully will be out spending the evening with a lovely Spanish girl, but you never know. Weirder things have happened. If not, Mike will be out doing something, drinking, getting into some kind of trouble. All right, boys. Glad to have you all here. Is Justin Trudeau, is he still Prime Minister of Canada? Has he quit yet? Is the vote of no confidence? I mean, wow. He's still around? Is Trudeau,
he is
Castro?
Dictator for life.
He's declared himself dictator for life, yeah.
Yeah, just like his dad.
Just like his dad. Yeah, that's right. And if you don't believe me on that one, look it up. I was going to look it up earlier, but
the only difference is Justin wears silkier panties.
Yeah, he wears silkier panties, and he wears blackface. All right, guys. It's a really weird fucking week, okay? This is a weird fucking week that we have sat through. And how weird is it, Mike? It's so weird that there's like alien drones and shit flying around in the sky. Like this thing. What the fuck is this thing? I mean, I don't know. Klingon ship, Klingon Romulan bird of prey converted to Klingon design. I don't know what this is, but it's some kind of drone, some kind of mechanical thing. And today it got even a little bit weirder. It got weirder just now, actually just recently, as after attending a classified briefing in a secure compartmentalized information facility, or a SCIF, Congressman Jim Himes said the following. Let's just listen in and see what Jim Himes, whoever he is, had to say.
These sightings in New Jersey, Connecticut, anywhere they're being cited, are federal government operations, and they are not. We were assured, and we asked this question over and over and over again.
Can't hear him, Mike.
Not federal government operations.
Quiet.
Yeah. Recovery, anything
Guys,
else.
yeah, I'm trying to
They remain committed to
trying to get it to play.
There is
A lot of
zero
support.
evidence of laws being broken by any of these drones. And the context here was the fact that when Josh and I lived.
Okay, well, apparently it's not really going to work. So what he actually said was these sightings in New Jersey, Connecticut, anywhere they're being cited, are federal government operations. Federal government operations. What exactly, guys, does that tell you? And, you know, President Trump actually jumped in on this. Maybe we can hear it better. I didn't realize the audio was so shitty on that video. Let's try one more here and get President Trump in on the action.
Can you comment on the drones that are flying around New Jersey ports? It seems like the American people have a big disconnect.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth? They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Okay, so the answer to that, I don't want to comment on that, is yes, he has received a briefing. So President Trump knows what they are. He says Joe Biden and everybody else knows what they are. Brooks, what the fuck do you think they are?
Well, if you lay this over the more than a rumor that there was some medical nuclear waste, or should I say radioactive waste, that was in transport, and when the truck arrived where it was supposed to arrive, the waste was gone. And they said, well, it must have leaked out. No, it didn't leak out. It got sold. And that's what they're worried about. Now, medical radioactive waste is probably an X-ray emitter because it's used, diagnostically. It could be isotopes. But in any case, what appears to be airborne are radiation detectors. Now, I have a degree in nuclear chemistry, and I can tell you that the safest way to detect nuclear waste, if it's gotten out of its container, is from the air, but not at 400 feet. It has to be done at like 30 feet because radiation dissipates very quickly. Normally, what they do is they use the drones to see what is the extent of the contamination. I've never seen them used to try to actually find a container because the containers are designed to keep the radiation in. The worry, I think, is that this waste can be used to be coupled with a conventional explosive and create a dirty bomb. In other words, aerosolize and spread that radiation so that it creates a weapon of terror.
Yeah.
I have a question for Brooks. Sure. Several of the drones were filmed spraying some type of liquid out of them. What do you think that was?
Well, that could be an indicator. Sometimes isotopes have affinity for other chemicals. They could be dropping those chemicals, which are also markers. It's sort of like dropping dye, and once it bonds to the radiation, then it appears. One of the things, one of the types of radiation is an alpha emitter. That is to say, it releases a energized neutron. You can't pick that up with a drone. It has to release an X-ray or a gamma ray. So they may be releasing something that in the presence of an energetic neutron will release an X-ray.
And the reports are that there's gamma ray detectors involved here. And another thing too is I want to go back. First of all, Brooks, those that people are saying they're spraying something. To me, it actually looked like a spotlight. It looked like a fairly weak spotlight shining down. It was just a beam of something. It could have been spray. That could have just been fog or little particulates in the atmosphere that were being illuminated by a beam of light. So I could not tell what that stuff was. But there is this, I think we looked at this last week, which is the time lapse of this stuff. Now, I want you to watch this again in a different context now of what we know this week that we didn't really know last week. So just watch the time lapse of drone activity over parts of New Jersey. Now, as I look at this, gentlemen, I think we talked about it last week. Everything's moving in a straight line. I'll tell you something else that looks like to me, Brooks. This looks like a search pattern. It really does look like a search pattern to me. Am I crazy for saying that?
Well, if it's a search pattern, they're way too high, unless they're looking for vehicles. Now, they could be tracking vehicles, but they're usually specialized aircraft for that. It's very difficult to track vehicles at night anyway. If you've ever flown at night in a plane, you can't see diddly squat on the ground. You could see headlights, but you can't like see a car or a house unless it's lit up. You could probably look with infrared, but again, it's not the way to search.
Yeah, well, you notice again though that they seem to be following the same patterns, and me personally, I feel like that is a search pattern. But I also want to share something else, Blake, before I throw it to you. This is something that I think is kind of important, and let me get it up on the screen. This is a guy named Wyatt who's pretty popular on Twitter. I'm not exactly sure why, but he is. Pointed out yesterday, the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 expires on December 20th of this year. That's 3 days from now. So the federal government is literally using a terrorism drone mystery psyop against you to manipulate Congress into passing the new HR 8610 counter UAS authority, security, Safety and Reauthorization Act of 2024, which will include appropriations and enhanced government powers to control you. And they're even going so far as to use it to push for acts of war against other countries, i.e. Russia, China, Iran. This is directly related to the Smith-Mundt Act being repealed, which prohibited the government from broadcasting propaganda. Blake, I found that to be a pretty fascinating analysis of what might be behind all this. What do you think about that idea?
I think it's about as great of a theory as I've heard on this one. So, whether it's searching for materials, whether it's a weapon, a nuke, or a dirty bomb, or the materials, or maybe something even more sophisticated. We know, like we just found out about the Russians with their new toys that they have. But we don't also know what's out there, so what they're looking for. But that one, if we're just a few days away from that and they can time it like that, would fall into their problem reaction solution. So, yeah, they have a problem when they want the public to be outraged, and then they're going to ask for Congress to pass some new bill on, drones, and there'll be other stuff baked into it that we won't know about. So, yeah, I could absolutely see that. It's definitely a psyop no matter what, and they aren't telling us the truth on that.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting, and I'm going to share one other video here. This is video of the White House. I don't know if you can see the red lights in the windows, but it looks like they might be burning shit in there, like documents or something. I don't know what's going on in there, but that is a gift from a couple of nights ago. I guess where I'm thinking about what I'm looking at here is I'm wondering, what is the psyop? But if it's not what this Wyatt guy is suggesting, Steve, you got any thoughts on why they're doing this? It seems like the answer to every problem government creates is more government control over our lives and our money. Does this make sense?
Well, I think that's exactly it. And the fact that they say that, the government can't disperse propaganda, they've been doing it since the beginning of time. They do it all the time, every day. And again, it's a control measure. They want the American people to focus on other things, not what they're really doing. And they have all of these distractions that they put out so that everybody's, what's going on over here? And then, 2 days later, they pass some bill that nobody knows anything about, or, they've gotten involved in some altercation in some foreign country or arrested somebody, or, some other super secret thing that they wanted to get away with. So, this is nothing new. Absolutely nothing new.
Trump obviously knows what they are. He's obviously briefed. If he's really in control, as the Jordans say, their QAnon crowd likes to say, why doesn't he just come out and pull the rug out from under the government? Because Joe Biden, there's a testimony today that Joe Biden is brain dead, basically. People saying he's not functional. So if he's not functional, then you can't really be betraying a guy who's not in charge anyway, because whoever's in charge is illegally in charge. Why doesn't he just come out and say something? Any thoughts on that?
Well, some of it is that, there are certain things that when you work for the federal government, when you work in certain areas, there are certain criteria that you have to follow when you're given government secrets. He is not the president yet. And by saying something, making a comment, he can get himself in real trouble. So once he's the president, he's out of that, he's out of that bowl of hot water. So he's probably just covering his butt until he takes office.
But Blake, doesn't the QAnon crowd tell us that he is president? He's been president all along. I mean,
yeah.
They
have spread that narrative for a long time and have been laughably wrong on a lot of it. Maybe they'll be justified in the end. I hope so. It's an interesting story, but maybe he's not saying it. I'm just guessing that he doesn't want to alarm the public and cause.
It should be zero anon. They're like zero credibility.
Yeah. 04. Brooks, you got some more thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, 8610 is a law they've tried to bring up a few times, which will authorize the shooting down of an operating aircraft in the air over America. Right now, it's against FAA regulations to shoot down an operating aircraft. You have to force it down to land, but you can't shoot it down from the ground. Trying to get 8610 passed is just going to open a whole ground warfare thing that the military can do, that they'll probably point at civilians operating drones for all kinds of different reasons, for non-nefarious reasons. But I'm with Blake. I think this is all just a show. It's just a distraction. We're 34 days away from Inauguration Day. They're going to do everything they can do to confuse and obfuscate and make the people worry about, alien invasions. Nobody's worried about that right now. But now we know they're operated by the federal government. We've got it from the horse's mouth.
Right.
Finally forced that.
That is what that guy said. That is what that guy said, even though we couldn't.
And the question is why? Why are they operating them?
Yeah.
And it's not just New Jersey. It's Chicago. It's Kazakhstan. It's everywhere. It's all over the world. Why are they doing it?
Haven't seen anything here in Vegas, though. I got to say that. I have not seen
it. Would be
hard to see anything here in Texas.
Yeah. It wouldn't last long in Texas.
No. A lot of the southern states, I don't think they'll deploy them because they wouldn't last very long.
Yeah. So nobody has any thoughts on what's going on here other than government psyop to get people to give up more of their freedoms. But honestly, everybody's like calling bullshit on this. I don't think it's the selling in any way, shape, or form. I don't expect any fear at all out there about this stuff.
Yeah, because psyop, rule number one is you must have a narrative. You've got to have a title that all the legacy media is going to use the same words. They don't have that. We beat them to it. We outed it before they could get the PSYOP going.
Okay. I have the wrong name. How did that happen?
We got 2 TVs, Blake Wall.
The interesting thing is that Elon Musk tweeted way back in September that this was coming.
He did. I did not know that. Do we have that?
Drone wars are coming. Yeah, I got it somewhere.
Oh, drone wars are coming. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's a nice link. To Trudeau.
I don't know what they're doing about the orbs, though. It's funny to see the drone come up to the orb, and then they meet, and then the drone falls out of the sky. So what are the orbs?
It is kind of interesting, and I do want to look. I actually do want to go back to that. Let's do a quick search for this
film. It may be generated, computer generated. I don't know, but a lot of people have seen it, and a lot of people have seen the orbs, and those are not drones. We don't know what they are.
Right. Now there's this video too that I want to share. That is explainable. So let's take a look at this. This is a close-up of something in the sky being shot at an extreme magnification. All right. So what this is Venus. And the guy has zoomed up his camera way beyond the capability of the graphics card inside the camera, and he has created a bunch of graphic artifacts, and are trying to sell this off as being some sort of floating orb, when in fact it appears to just be Venus. Now, is there anybody here that disagrees with me about that, specifically Brooks?
No,
or are we?
That thing's pixelated like crazy.
Yeah, this is what happens, or it could even be a plane. When you zoom up on something like that, you just get pixelation, and it just becomes kind of a mess.
It looks like a plane to me.
That could be a plane, actually. Okay, one other thing that happened this week, which I think is really kind of important. Okay, Syria. Is the Israelis let off, speaking of nukes, let off a big bomb in Syria. Let's watch it. 3-1. Now, they apparently hit an ammunition. But some people are concerned or claiming that Israel fired off a small nuke. Now, this is not a nuke, in my opinion, because a nuke's going to give you a much brighter flash, much faster shockwave, and really big boom sound. Am I wrong, Brooks?
No, you got it exactly right. That was verified to be a Wagner weapons depot. And that worries me. Is that if the Israelis are hitting Russian stockpiles of weapons, they're crossing the line. Everybody's going after ISIS stockpiles, but not Russian ones.
Okay. Blake, you look like that surprised you. Any thoughts about that? Like, is there a potential for escalation in Syria, or is Syria pretty much over now?
I don't know what they can do, because now they're basically being run by the moderate rebels, and Assad has fled. So it's like a power vacuum, I suppose, to some degree, but it'll be run as a proxy by the West and Israel. I don't know what I don't know if there's still like skirmishes going on, or why they would escalate there, but I'm never really thought of Bibi as somebody who's restrained, nothing like Putin. So nothing would surprise me at that point, but I hadn't seen that yet. So I'm curious to know more, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be messing with the Russian stockpiles.
And again, the question is, are these really Russian government stuff? Is this their lawful government, or are these Russian mercenaries operating under the banking cabal? Steve, any thoughts on any of that stuff?
The reality is that whenever you're in any type of a conflict, before it's declared to be over, you try to destroy as much of the enemy's armament as you possibly can and reduce their capabilities to attack you again. So I'm thinking, Israel isn't dumb enough to go toe to toe with Russia at this juncture. I'm thinking it may be Russian munitions that were sold to the Middle East, but I don't think it was their stockpile.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I'm trying to find the best picture of Justin Castro, and I just here it is. Here it is. Probably my picture. So
It's a picture of you.
no, yeah, well, no, it's not. It's a picture that I put on the internet. I didn't make it, but I put it up. So again, if anybody has any doubt that this guy whose mom fucked Fidel Castro, that's his kid. This is an interesting question, sort of a psychological question. Let's start with you, Blake. Why do people want to believe that this isn't true when it couldn't be more obvious that they're father and son? I mean, what is the psyche that just denies the reality that stares them literally right in the face?
That's a great question because it's an open secret, and they do mental gymnastics to pretend that there's not a connection there when we clearly have the pictures. I mean, there's no doubt if you look at Pierre, his supposed real father, next to Fidel, and they used to love his father and his mother, who was like 30 years younger, and she was like a socialite, and they were swingers back in the 60s.
She was a total slut. Yeah, I've got pictures of her vagina when she was 30 something. I mean, before Justin came out of it. But yeah, and she totally fucked Fidel Castro. And here she is. This may not be the other baby, but presenting a child to Fidel on the tarmac in, I think, at New York at the UN meeting. But anyway, go ahead.
It's interesting because there's so much connection, and they took multiple trips out to Cuba. And it's so obvious to anybody looking at it. And if you can show the picture of his supposed real dad, Pierre, who was a former PM, and I guess a respectable guy to some standard. But there's no doubt who the real father is. And it's bizarre but I mean, there's state-run media up there in Canada. So.
And Steve, again, I've had people come into my chat and go, "Oh, that's not true. She didn't ever meet Fidel Castro until like a year after Justin was born." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, she never just showed up at his hotel in New York."
When he was documented, their contact was documented. It was even documented by the U.S. government because they want to keep tabs on who's doing what with who.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's federal documentation that they had, not necessarily that they had relations, but they had encounters prior to Justin's birth.
Yep.
We have lots of examples of this. I mean, Christ, what about Webb Hubble and Chelsea Clinton?
Yeah, that's another one.
Oh my gosh.
I've got that. It's could not be more obvious that is not.
Obama too, with Frank Marshall Davis.
Yeah, Obama with his purchased children. Yeah, that's another thing. So
this stuff has been going on since our country began. It's amazing how the East Coast elite sleep around with each other. And personally, I think it's like back in the medieval times, they figure if they have children with each other, that they have a bond and it keeps them safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, they think it is bloodline stuff. They think they actually, if you really want to get into it, Steve, get into the weirdness of it. They all think that they're from an alien bloodline from the Pleiades and Orion and places like that. But
like I said, it's like the medieval thing where they're constantly boffing each other, having each other's children, that type of thing. Again, it's a protection mechanism for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, let's actually go a little deeper into some other stuff that I think is really interesting. ABC News and George Step on All of Us are $15 million lighter in the wallet this week. Why are they $15 million lighter in the wallet? Actually, 16 when you throw in Donald Trump's attorney's fees, because they paid and had to admit that Donald Trump, despite what George Step on All of Us claimed repeatedly in this interview with Representative Nancy Mace, is not a riffist.
And you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and 2 separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they?
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive, and I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you
at
all. In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
they are judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple thing of doing.
He defended himself over that and denies that it ever happened, but he was not found guilty in a criminal court of law. It was a civil judgment.
So is that the distinction you're making? A civil judgment is okay, but a criminal judgment is not?
This is different, and they didn't even input all of the evidence into the civil case either, because some of the information she provided wasn't even accurate or correct. But to sit here and ask me as a rape victim to try to shame me for my political choices is wrong, and I think it's offensive.
You can repeat that again and again and again.
I'm going to because I find it deeply offensive.
You don't find it offensive that Donald Trump has been found liable for rape?
I find it offensive as a rape victim that you're trying to shame me for my political choices. And I've said again repeatedly, E. Jean Carroll has made a mockery out of rape by joking about it. I don't find that funny.
Well,
rape is not funny.
You've made it perfectly clear.
Rape is serious.
You've made it perfectly clear. You're comfortable.
Rape is serious.
It is serious.
It's not funny, and it shouldn't be made a mockery of. But if you want to defend a woman who made a mockery out of rape, then you go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do that.
Well, actually, what you're doing is defending a man who's been found liable for rape. I don't understand how you can do that.
Not in a criminal court of law. This was a civil judgment over sexual abuse, not rape, by the way, and she made a mockery out of it.
Okay, wow is all I have to say about that. So, based on this, guys, what? Yeah, that is a real picture. There is no AI there. There is no Photoshop. Donald Trump's already got 15 million out of this little fucking turd. And by the way, there is a chance that he will experience the crime of rape in prison because he'll be everybody's favorite little butt boy if he goes there, which we can all hope and pray that he does. And by the way, again, George Step on all of us, the guy who defended Bill Clinton, who is a legitimate rapist. This whole thing stinks. I thought Nancy Mace held up very well, although I wish she would have just said he's clearly not guilty. I mean, the truth is there's a lot more stuff about the E. Jean Carroll case. She categorically fabricated the entire thing. It was the plot of a Law and Order episode. Steve, is it time for, among other things, journalists to pay a price the way Step on All of Us is going to pay for lying about political candidates and government officials or people that are in power? And is it time women start being prosecuted, just pretty much snap automatically, for falsely accusing men of sexual assault and rape?
first of all, I truly believe that obviously the news network is going to pay the $15 million plus, but I believe that the news anchor, if they knowingly tell a lie or spew propaganda, they should be held personally liable as well as the company that they work for. So
Yep.
both of them should be held liable. So, and a lot of this money should be coming out of Stephanopoulos' pocket. He should be losing his home or having his bank account seized as well. Additionally, it's, again, for years and years and years, women have used rape, incest, child molestation against men whenever they want to get even with them. So I wholeheartedly agree that if the person is found innocent, that they did not commit it, that it is proven that they fabricated the story, that they should do time in a state or federal penitentiary.
I agree. I think if it's proven that you falsely accused a man of rape, I think you go to jail for a year automatically, and it should be a felony. You should be a felony on your record.
I think it should be more than a year in the county jail.
No.
It should be a prison sentence. And secondly, that goes for any accusation that's untrue. I mean, one of the things that the politicians love to do is accuse other people that are their enemies of crimes that they did not commit or things that they did not do. If it's found out that it was a fabrication just to defame that person, they should be held not only civilly liable, but criminally liable.
Yeah, defamation and criminal. Brooks, you got a thought here?
Well, I totally agree with Steve. I think that the biggest fear that these news actors have is poverty. They're allergic to it. They don't associate with people that are afflicted with poverty because they're afraid it'll rub off on them. You take their money and they become sniveling little children. By the way, right after this happened, right after George Step on All of Us had to pay this $15 million that the studio did, the black woman, who's the black news actress that has the Trump wig, I can't remember her name now.
Joy Reid.
Joy Reid, yeah.
Exactly the same thing. Another network said exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Blake, any thoughts? You don't have to contribute to this, and you don't have to agree with us. But I think this is one of the most. This can literally change the course of a man's life, and unfortunately, women do this all the time.
Well, the problem is that once the accusation is leveled, people will say, even if you're found innocent, and I've seen this time and time again in my law enforcement career, even if you're found innocent, you have people who go, well, he just had a good lawyer that got him off. There was a police officer in Michigan who his only crime was being a wonderful dad and marrying a psycho woman. And she convinced her daughter to testify against this wonderful man who raised her children, paid for everything, that she was raped by him. He was convicted, went to prison for 15 years, and then the daughter found Jesus, came forward and said, I lied about everything. He never touched me. He was the most wonderful father anybody ever could have, and my mother convinced me to do it. The mom still being alive. He was released from prison, and still people were saying, well, maybe, she just loved him and let him off the hook. But the reality is, she was a minor at the time, so she can basically gets a pass. But the mother should have been sentenced to prison to do as many years as he did as an innocent man. And nothing happened. Not one thing happened to the mother. Nothing.
Well, how about the stripper with the lacrosse players?
Yeah, that was the other thing. Is the Duke lacrosse players? This case was 20 years ago. This girl, who I guess wanted to cover up that she'd been cheating on her boyfriend, accused 3 Duke lacrosse players of raping her. She came forward this week and said, "No, I lied and made it all up." And those guys' lives were ruined. Blake, any thoughts you want to add to this? You don't have to.
I mean, I'll just say, George Stephanopoulos deserves to get sued. It should be probably more than that because he should have known full well that E. Jean Carroll was fucking nuts and had no credibility.
He does know. Yeah, he knew, but he's pushing an agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, and Nancy Mace is right. She did make a mockery out of rape, and she was on Anderson Cooper, and she said rape is sexy, and she says it admitted that it doesn't have to be physical. And as you said, they just ripped the plot line right out of a Law and Order plot. Yeah, so it's incredulous. Like somehow Trump found her in this high-end department store and tried to pin her down in the dressing room. I mean, it was so ridiculous that nobody serious could possibly believe it. And
that's the other thing. Like Blake just said, that's the other thing. Rape doesn't have to be physical. It damn sure does have to be physical. Mm-hmm. And I'm so sick and tired of this stuff. Well, it's how he made me feel. It's how he made me feel.
He looked at he sexually assaulted me by the way he looked at me.
What?
Yeah. He sexually assaulted me by the way he looked at me. It's
that's basically what she's saying. It doesn't have to be physical. He walked past me, he gave me a look, and I felt as though I'd been raped, and he raped me. And that kind of stuff is total, absolute bullshit, and it goes on in the workplace all the time.
Yeah.
Where, some girl gets sideways with her boss or a coworker or whatever, and literally, well, it's how you made me feel. And the problem with that is the courts have upheld that nonsense.
Yes, well, because the courts are compromised. I got an answer for you, business owners. Don't hire women. Don't hire any. You won't have this problem. You don't have an HR.
I'll tell you, I don't work. I'm pretty much a contractor now and I'm on my own. But when I was in the workplace, I went out of my way because it was so prevalent. I never had a woman in my office by myself. Never had a woman in the office with the door closed.
Nope.
If there was a woman in the break room and I was walking toward the break room, I would wait till she left before I went in and got a cup of coffee, or I'd have them put a coffee machine in my office because I didn't need to deal with the BS.
Yeah.
Because no woman can resist you. That's why. No.
That's true. And I also remember the story that you told me about how there was this super hot girl that worked in one office, and every morning you just walked right past her. Every so often you might say good morning. That's it. You just walked right past her. And then she, of course, the response was, she was like, why is this guy not hitting on me? So she started hitting on you. I remember that story. That was a good one.
Well, all right. But see, the reality is that if you do anything more than that, and that was the other thing, right? It's like, you can't even be polite anymore. It's, a lot of times you work with people, you see them on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they get a haircut, they buy a new suit, whatever the case may be. And you go, oh, you look very nice today. Automatically, that is turned into some kind of sexual innuendo.
Yep.
When all you're doing is paying a legitimate compliment, and it's really destroyed our society.
Well, yeah, and the thing is too is if you don't want to be like, if you have women in the work environment, you're going to have normal interactions between men and women, right? So, Blake, can we fix this without just separating the sexes again, or do we have to change the laws?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on the work environment. They might have to play that a little bit differently. That's going to be a tough sell with the HR, but I don't know.
Well, you can't, the reality is, how can you be productive? How can you have a productive society when people can make accusations such as, he raped me, but it wasn't physical, and the courts uphold it? How can you have any kind of productivity with that kind of bullshit going on?
The purpose of the courts, the purpose of the courts is to take resources away from men and give them to women. That's
we know that the feminization of the United States has been going on for a number of years, but things need to change, and men need to start fighting back hammer and tong and not settling for it. A lot of times HR will call you and, well, we're just going to write you up and we're going to do this, and men need to go, no, go screw yourself. I'm suing your ass off because I didn't do anything.
That is kind of what's happening, the sort of the MGTOW movement. And by the way, this is what I wanted to talk about. I couldn't get a video clip of it, but there's a hilarious Saturday Night Live skit where Tom Brady was the host, And the ugly guy, Fred, what's his name, Armisen, walks up to one of the girls in the office and he says, "Hey, how's it going? You look great today." And she's like, "He's harassing me, sexual harassment." And then Tom Brady, who's tall and handsome, shows up in his underwear and says, "Hey, how you doing? You want to go out?" And she's like, "Oh, yes, you're so handsome. Let's go out." So it's like, it's sexual harassment if you're not good looking, but if you're really good looking, it's not sexual harassment. So that was the lesson in that one. Anyway, all right, gentlemen, let's move on. I want to go actually back to the drone thing because there's a video that I missed. It is a Pentagon briefing from, I don't know, some general or something. Let's go to that guy and listen to this one more time. This is got to add a little bit more depth to what we're talking about here. Let's go.
Just why does it have to be a classified briefing if these are just hobbyist drones? They're not military drones. Why is it a classified briefing on the Capitol Hill?
I don't. I'd have to refer you to Congress on that. Again, sharing as much information as we can here. I don't have the briefing in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically, what aspects are classified or not. I can assure you, though, that again, we are sharing as much information as we can based on what we
liar.
Just
again, the lying. There's something else here, and I know we already kind of beat this to death, but Blake, there's got to be some. There's an agenda here. Any thoughts at all about what that agenda might actually be?
No, it's a great question. Like, I think it might be just a weapon of some kind. They just don't want to alarm the public. So we just know that they're likely ours. They're not UFOs. They're not from another country. They're doing some kind of a psyop that they're trying to be quiet about. They obviously can't, but they can't alarm the public and say, "Oh my God, we think there might be a weapon." So I guess they're just going to play dumb until they neutralize whatever threat may be out there. That's really all I can think of. And just
well, see, the good thing that came out of COVID, the great thing that came out of COVID, is once people found out that they had the wool pulled over their eyes, they're not putting up with this BS anymore. Mm-hmm. And when things like this occur, they're asking hard questions. They want answers. They're not backing off. They're not taking the government's nonsense of, well, it's on a need-to-know basis and you don't need to know, and people are pushing back, and that is a wonderful thing. You don't, like, if this had been, a few years ago, people would have been panic-stricken. Now, not only are they not panic-stricken, they're fighting back.
Yeah.
Is a great thing.
Absolutely. Okay.
I still think when you couple this with the 8610 expiration date, it just raises the.
I think it fits, but the thing is, Brooks, if that's true, and that's a very valid line of reasoning by the Wyatt account there. Why aren't they then? Shouldn't they be making a big stink about this thing going through? But on the other hand, maybe it's just going to be part of the gigantic omnibus bill, and it's going to get signed back into law in 2 or 3 days, in which case, why do they have to do the whole drone show? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me from that perspective. All right. One other thing then, everybody's favorite Congresswoman, Liz Cheney, was referred for criminal conduct, for criminal charges today. Was it today? Yeah, it was today. Criminal charges for her conduct with the January 6th committee, where she suborned perjury, withheld evidence, destroyed evidence, committed various other acts, and Liz Cheney got really, really upset. Now, it couldn't happen. Liz, I just really hope that you and your father get a cell. Hopefully you can share a cell in Gitmo. Liz Cheney says she's above the law. This is Molly. When it comes to lying about important aspects of January 6th, supporting perjury, destroying evidence, and tampering with witnesses. Here's Liz Cheney's statement exclusively on Blue Sky. If you don't know what Blue Sky is, it's Twitter for pedophiles. Here's her statement. See below for my statement in response to Chairman Loudermilk's interim report. January 6th showed Donald Trump for who he really is, a cruel and vindictive man who allowed violent attacks to continue against our Capitol and law enforcement officers while he watched television and refused for hours to instruct his supporters to stand down and leave. And again, right there, that entire thing is a complete lie. And it was also completely exposed this week, by the way, that the feds, there were 26 feds there at a minimum. It's just hard to believe that anybody can say this with a straight face. The January 6th committee's hearings and report featured scores of Republican witnesses, Republicans like you, including many of the most senior officials from Trump's own White House campaign and administration. All of this testimony was painstakingly set out in thousands of pages of transcripts made public along with a highly detailed and meticulously sourced 800-page report. The Department of Justice conducted its own independent investigation and reached the same fundamental conclusions. Now, Chairman Loudermilk's interim report intentionally disregards the truth and the Select Committee's tremendous weight of evidence and instead fabricates lies and defamatory allegations in an attempt to cover up what Donald Trump did. Their allegations do not reflect a review of the actual evidence and are malicious and a cowardly assault on the truth. No reputable lawyer, legislator, or judge would take this seriously. Lynn Cheney needs to go to a hell that is so deep.
Well, I mean, now they're starting to run scared. I mean, look at that Lieutenant Byrd, the guy who fired the shot. He's saying he's going to spill his guts if he doesn't get a pardon from Biden. And if Biden is in the situation that they claim he is, just interfering and making phone calls to people.
Want to bet? Yeah.
What?
Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
Stop interrupting me, Mike. Anyway, but if Biden is in the now you got me confused. If Biden's mental condition is as stated, he's not going to be doing any more pardons, and hopefully these people are going to run scared and run right to the people that need to take action on this and prosecute all of the people involved in that situation.
Yeah. I would say Michael Byrd has a 90% chance of being filmed in his car out of the corner of somebody's video on fire, crashing over a guardrail, just like the boyfriend of the Georgia governor, Kemp, right before he turned tail on Trump. So I expect him to be blown up in his car really soon. Brooks.
He'll have 5 bullets in his head and be deemed a
they won't be that late. He'll have a car accident. That's what I think is going to happen. But go ahead.
Liz Cheney put together the biggest psyop, I think, in government history. It's not the 800 pages that she submitted. It is the 800 pages that she deleted. All of the testimony from the dead Capitol Police, they can't be re-interviewed because they're dead. They allegedly shot themselves. All those testimony from the Capitol Police that revealed that they were ordered to open the doors, to let the tourists in, to interrupt the certification of the electors, because Arizona was turning the tables over. They were saying we had shenanigans going on in our state. We can't certify our election. We need some time to go back home and go through this. We had laws that were changed illegally in our state, and we may have to run this election again in our state. They could not allow that to happen. I think Pelosi and Cheney were involved in making this happen. It was not Donald Trump. It was not the White Hats. They needed that certification process stopped. The fact that she destroyed the evidence, all the recordings and the videos, means she goes to prison. Simple as that.
Let's hope so. Or either that or the hell where people are skinned alive. That's from Big Trouble in Little China, by the way. TV's Blake Wally, what do you think of Liz Cheney and her cohorts, and what ought to happen to these people? You were there on January 6th. It was a peaceful protest. Everything she said in that statement was a lie. Donald Trump told people to go protest peacefully and then head home. He tried to call out the National Guard. Pelosi refused. Literally every fucking thing in that statement is a lie.
Well, Blake and I were both there.
Well, okay, so what do you think ought to happen to Liz Cheney, and why is it beheading?
She's definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, she's definitely looking at 20 years. Maybe that'd be easier just to have her off with her head. I don't know. Maybe she can volunteer for that if she wants because of all the shame. Yeah, she needs to be exposed. She's pretty much red-handed. She was caught tampering with a witness, Cassidy Hutchinson. That also it contradicts her story. If Trump was watching TV, then how was he commandeering the armored limo, the Beast, as said by the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson? But she was misled on that. And they kept she had text messages going back and forth between her and Liz, and she kept her attorney out. They tried to disbar one of the attorneys. Like it was really bad what they did. Not only tampering evidence, but deleting evidence, as Brooks said, red-handed. You got Pelosi. They didn't call in the National Guard. There's so many issues that they're going to have to be held accountable for. So I guess they lost their turn. And yeah, you can only imagine it. It's a great point also by Brooks. There were several police officers that, just all of a sudden just committed suicide or what have you. So who knows what what they were hiding. There's so much that they've been covering. Yeah. They gave the public a fraction just of what they wanted to know to frame that narrative that it was Trump, creating an insurrection, and it was all BS. So
it's called coming to a conclusion and making the evidence fit.
That's right. They edited all the video, and I remember it was Tucker that released a lot of the video to the public, and the public was like, wait a minute, these people aren't insurrectionists. They're freaking tourists. They're staying inside the velvet ropes, taking pictures, waving American flags. The doors were open from the inside. They got camera footage of it. We didn't know that because Liz Cheney didn't show us that.
Yeah. Also tonight in breaking news, Kirk Cousins has been benched by the Atlanta Falcons, and Michael Penix Jr. is going to start, and he'll play the next 10 years. Okay, a couple other things. I wanted to ask you guys, also, don't forget this. When someone tells you, by the way, that they're pansexual, this is what I think of.
Oh, my God.
Couldn't resist that one. That was good. That was on my Twitter feed. Whenever the memes are good on my Twitter feed. There is another one that's pretty interesting. This was great. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just hit a million on Bluey. That's Blue Sky. And Dan Moody says, announced on X because it's the only platform that matters. Blue Sky, once again, is Twitter for pedophiles. Actually, I had one other news note. Brooks, or did you have something you wanted to add to the Liz Cheney conversation before I interrupted you?
So, no, I just want to subtract all the oxygen from her room.
Okay. This is interesting that I thought I would put up and talk about. This is a post on a 4chan or an 8chan. Brooks, you look like you've already read it. It's pretty interesting stuff. Oh, wait a minute. Ellen, how is Miss Fluffy Muffy? She's doing better. Turns out I was giving her some medicine, the wrong medicine, and it was making her very sick, like she had the flu. I stopped it. She's better. She still has lots of scabs that need to be treated from scratching and things like that. But thank you for asking. This is a really interesting statement off of 4chan. And all I'm going to say about these kinds of things is I saw one in July of 2020 that told exactly how they were going to steal the 2020 election in people's minds on election night, and that Fox News was going to lead the way by calling a clearly Republican state for Joe Biden. And that is exactly what happened. So I'm just going to preface that with what this guy's talking about with regard to the drones. All right. So this is kind of long. Bear with me. And then I want to get comments from everybody. The next false flag will be centered on the premise of malicious interdiction of nuclear source materials. Gee, does that sound familiar? It will not involve a nuclear device or nuclear detonation, but rather a radiological threat. Nuclear source materials will be deliberately leaked to target areas to inflict severe injuries through radiation exposure. The real number of casualties as a result of these attacks will remain very low. The purpose is to create a new method of restricting freedom of movement and new policies that will enable the government to continue its expansion of power. The media will display images of attack survivors who have burns and lesions across their skin. Videos depicting overwhelmed triage centers with victims vomiting or otherwise unresponsive will be shared on social media. The threat of radiation exposure, an invisible enemy, will be used as the primary vector. An application modeled after COVID contact tracing will be installed on every mobile device or Android. Maybe why Elon needs to make a phone. This hazardous exposure and rent actions they should take, which include voluntary exposure testing. I wonder if they're going to stick a Q-tip up your butt for that one, guys. Additionally, cellular characters will roll out automated SMS alerts that will have similar functionality. The application will interface directly with UICC on mobile devices. If the user does not have this application installed, network connectivity will be prohibited. New policy will grant government agencies further access to metadata and geolocation data on every platform. Included in these policies will be backdoor legislation that bans the use of end-to-end encryption, meaning you can't hide from this. The legislation will be identical in nature to the recently introduced S.3538 Earn It Act. These attacks will be localized to a specific region, like, I don't know, New Jersey. Triage centers will be set up in the affected areas through the deployment of the National Guard and coordinating members such as FEMA. These triage centers will see moderate traffic. The narrative will continue longer than any possible threat. Despite offering no protection or even relevancy against a radiological threat, you will see another wave of people wearing cotton surgical masks in just the targeted areas, not just the targeted areas, but the entire United States. There will be severe disruptions to the internet through the use of addition rather than negation. Alternative sources of information will become overwhelmed with content generated by convolutional neural networks that support the narrative or uses a carefully crafted opposition. Platforms that are incompatible with this system will be suppressed entirely on the infrastructure level. There will be organic service disruptions as a result of excess traffic. Videos will surface showing these triage centers empty with the personnel staffing them idle. Remember, during COVID, I went to my local emergency room and it was completely empty when they were supposed to be overwhelmed. This will threaten the narrative. The control of information is required for the campaign to be successful. The perpetrator will not be an Islamic affiliated group or evil incel domestic threat. It will have no relevance to the ongoing Ukraine conflict, but the blame will fall on all of these groups. The fog of war will surround information relating to the origin, and this will be intentional. The real attacks will be psychological. Fear will be exploited, just like the manufactured response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I found this to be fascinating because basically what it shows me, or what it appears to be, is that they're going to try to amp up World War III levels of fear-mongering, Steve, with a bullshitting.
I mean, you know, COVID was Act 1. This is going to be Act 2. If that doesn't work, there'll be an Act 3. It's the same story, different day. They want to control the population. They want to make us, you know, limit our access to each other. I mean, that's the big thing. What COVID caused was our ability to interact with each other, because you had to stay at your own house, or, you know, you were separated at work. You couldn't, I mean, in my case, fortunately, you know, I worked at a great place where we all said, screw it, and just did what we wanted to anyway. But the reality is they're trying to separate people, because when people can't communicate with each other, or they can shut down your communication so you can't communicate, it creates panic, and people become terrified when they feel like they're isolated.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they become panicked when they think someone's listening to what they're saying to one another. By the way, I own one of these.
Okay.
This is a gamma spectrometer. So when I turn this on,
I would expect nothing less.
I not only pick up the radiation, but I can tell you what the radiation comes from. Cesium, whatever radioactive source, I can tell you what it comes from.
If Dr. Agnew did not have one of those, I would have been disappointed.
I would have been disappointed too. I think
carry it with me whenever I travel. I even use it in the airplane sometimes to make sure.
I think Blake has the once. I think Blake wants one of those. I saw the look on your face, Blake.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
about
$90, and it's way better than the Geiger counter. Way better.
Oh.
I haven't seen that kind of lust in Blake's eyes since the belly dancer in North Carolina. Okay. Blake, any thoughts on this? It sounds far-fetched, but on the other hand, it makes sense. But here's the thing. I don't think it's going to work. I think people are going to say, oh, fuck you and your radiation. At least most people. No, it's bullshit. Am I wrong?
Well, people are going to do it now. Like I said, people are. Oh, I'm sorry, Blake. I thought he was talking generally. Sorry.
Go ahead, Steve, and then we'll go with Blake. Go ahead. We have time.
Well, no, I'm just saying that people, like I said earlier, they're sick and tired of the bull crap. And so when they say, oh, this is happening and we have all of these people who are, victims of, some nuclear fallout or a dirty bomb or whatever whatever crap they're going to pull, people are going to go and look. They're going to go to the hospital like you went to the hospital. They're going to go to these areas and see what's going on. And they're going to push back because they got fooled once. They're not going to get fooled twice. And obviously there are going to be some people who are going to pay the price from the perspective that the government will, in fact, harm them to make the storyline look good. But the reality is that the rank and file citizen, I believe, at this point, is gonna call their bluff and refuse to cooperate. And people like myself, I drive old cars. I do that intentionally. They don't have chips in them. And I could give a crap less if I have a cell phone. In fact, when I retire, good luck getting a hold of me.
Yeah.
Because all a phone is to me is a leash.
Yep. Blake, any thoughts on that crazy scenario that got laid out on 4chan there?
It's not that crazy, and that's probably in a parallel world. Had Kamala won, they could probably put that in the playbook, certainly. So I think, playing for COVID lockdown 2.0, this with a different threat, but they'd still be using the contact tracing, and they'd have to monitor and make sure keep us safe. And maybe they could try to pull something like that off before Trump takes office, but there's just a lack of leadership. So they wouldn't be able to pull it off even if they wanted to, because Biden is really aged very quickly, is not competent, is not there. And Kamala is, in hiding. She's a drunk. There's no way they could pull that off, but that would certainly be something in the playbook if they could think they could get away with it.
Yeah. Okay, one last thing before we get out of here, guys. Guess who's back in the news? Our two favorite guys, George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. Why? Because something happened this week, which is that Derek Chauvin filed in court a couple months ago, and got a ruling from a U.S. District Court judge in Minnesota. And the ruling said, among other things, that the autopsy report on George Floyd, shows that antemortem blood was collected by the hospital on 5/25/20. Okay, what does that mean? That means that George Floyd was alive at the hospital when they collected the blood, and it means Derek Chauvin didn't kill him, that he wasn't dead, and that he didn't die on that street, and that therefore nothing that Derek Chauvin did could have possibly killed him because he was still alive. And by the way, we already have the toxicology report, which shows he had enough fentanyl in his system to kill a horse. Does this change anything? Does Chauvin, the fact that this judge is granting that he's going to be allowed to test the heart tissue, which is what this comes down to, and prove that he didn't kill George Floyd, does Derek Chauvin get released, Steve? Does he eventually get off on this thing and get released?
He should be released immediately.
Yeah. I think pending this, he should be released.
Exactly. Well, the reality is, obviously, an attorney is going to have to file an order to make that happen. But if there is evidence that he was alive at the hospital, they should, somebody should be filing a motion to get him released immediately.
Yeah.
Penny defense.
What's that?
You could call it the penny defense.
Yeah.
And he should get a boatload of money for being maliciously prosecuted.
Right. And then
Right.
let's burn Kenosha, Wisconsin again.
Yeah. Well, that's
Oh,
the
yeah,
thing.
they will. I mean, the propaganda is going to come out again, like we just said earlier in the broadcast, that, people are still going to say, oh, the government's just covering up for them. Trump got into office, got the federal judge to make this ruling. It's all a lie. He really killed him. They're going to go through that whole scenario that he's still guilty.
All right. Blake, do you have any thoughts about this? Isn't this kind of a major development if it turns out, A, he was alive at the hospital, and B, Chauvin is now going to, his lawyers, people, that necrotic tissue and determine exactly what killed the guy?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if fentanyl did, take Floyd down, I mean, the optics were bad. We could look at, the Chauvin background. Maybe he was kind of a dickhead, but that doesn't mean that he killed him out on the street like that, or was some racist, white cop just killing a black man in cold blood, and then they burned half the country down. No, he should be, exonerated, and he's just basically like a sacrificial lamb. They almost had to, make him as a political prisoner just so they could shut the public up, so they didn't, continue to rioting and looting. But yeah, he really got caught in that. That's awful, and they should be exonerated if the forensics prove that he didn't have anything to do with it. And then, compensate him big time and reset this narrative, because George Floyd is no saint.
And tear down all the George Floyd statues and cover up all the paintings on the sides of buildings.
Yeah, that's another good idea. I'll tell you what, there's something more to this between Floyd and Chauvin. I don't think either one of them is innocent, but I don't think that Floyd died because of anything Chauvin did, nor did he die on the street, it doesn't look like. Don't forget, they were both security guards at a local strip club. They both knew each other. Drugs were being run out of that strip club, like fentanyl, and so was counterfeit money. And George Floyd, the cops were called on him. Why? Because he tried to pass a counterfeit 20. And then the guy who works with him at the place where the counterfeits are probably being made, or at least run through, shows up as the cop to put his knee on his neck and kill it. I don't know. I don't know, guys. There's something much deeper and dirtier about this. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up the news show tonight. Thank you for being here. A lot of opinions tonight, a lot of strong ones. We are going to be off for New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve the next 2 weeks. We will be back in January. I do appreciate each and every one of you. Deb from Sacramento, our mod on the YouTube side. Deb, I really appreciate you, sweetie. I'm really glad that you're there. And, look, I understand rape is a sensitive subject, but I think it's also obviously clear, number one, that Donald Trump didn't rape anybody. And number two, and this is the most important thing, there are a lot of false accusations against innocent men. And I'm sorry, but this is a toxically masculine show, and we're going to take the guy's side unless there's proof otherwise. And there needs to be a rebalancing of our legal system the way things work now. I understand.
This is my thing. If an individual is, convicted of rape, child molestation, any type of criminal act of that nature, I think they deserve the death penalty. I'm not defending in any way, shape, or form a person who is guilty of those crimes. My problem is when somebody makes a false accusation, it's proven to be a false accusation, and they walk, and the other person had to suffer for it. So,
unfortunately, many of these things are not proven false until 10 or 20 years later, and by then
I understand that. But once it's proven false, the person who propagated it needs to go take their place.
Bye-bye. Needs to go bye-bye. All right, guys, thank you for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I'll be back with Jen tomorrow morning for Tell the Truth Wednesday. I'm doing some other stuff. I'm doing Whiskey and Wisdom tomorrow night and some other stuff. Love each and every one of you guys. And as always, if there is some important news, we will do a special show like the night that they tried to assassinate President Trump in Butler on Saturday. We all jumped on. I was really proud of the team for that. You guys keep an eye on your news reports, because we may have to jump on and do a special episode, because shit is getting weird out there. Shit's getting weird.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. See you next year.